All right, hello. Today I'm going to talk about the M16A4 as depicted in the game Squad from the perspective of a prior service Marine. I served in the Marine Corps during the 2010s. I was a 2111 armor, so I worked on pretty much all the small arms and stuff common to the Marine Corps. And so I actually have a lot of experience working on M16A4s and shooting M16A4s. So from that perspective, let's look at how they did it in the game Squad right here. So we'll kind of take a look here. Right here, M16A4, you can see it's got a nice salty Marine Corps stock. The RCO right there on the top. It's got the Knights Armament quad rail up there in the front. A PEC 16 mounted in the front, as well as our LAM. Now, one thing, when I was in the Marine Corps, I actually never saw a PEC 16. I know that the PEC 16 is the Marine Corps' LAM, and I think it entered service around the time I joined the Marine Corps, but I actually never saw one. So I'm assuming during my time, it was like infantry guys were using them or whatever, and they probably are a lot more common nowadays. But when I was in the Marine Corps, I personally never saw one, but I know that they were around. It was always PEC 15s when I was in. Usually tan PEC 15s, but sometimes the black ones. But yeah, so yeah, we got a PEC 16 there bolted on the side for our LAM. You would never see issued rifle without some kind of LAM on it. That's pretty standard nowadays, so that's really good. Of course, the M16A4, the Marine Corps really, the Marine Corps still uses the M16A4, but in terms of frontline infantry units using them, that's really kind of like the earlier years of the global war on terror. In the 2010s, most of the infantry guys were using M4s. And then, of course, later on, nowadays, it's the M27 that replaced the M4. So let's take a look at the 3D model that they have in the game. So here we are, the M16A4. This one has a carrying handle on it. So we'll go, I guess, kind of from back and front. Now the stock right here, I can see that there's already one thing missing here on the stock. It's a sling swivel. There should be a sling swivel sticking out from the bottom of the stock, and that's completely non-existent here. So I guess that's a demerit, if you will. No big deal, though. But I do like how salty this stock looks. Here we have the butt plate. Excuse me. We have the butt plate right here with the trap door. That's where the cleaning kit goes. This screw right here is what attaches the stock to the receiver extension. The screw on the bottom is actually what holds the sling swivel in, if it existed in this game, which it doesn't. But yeah, so it's a good butt plate right there. One thing I noticed about this, and I was really excited when they brought the Marine Corps into Squad. The Marine Corps has only been in Squad for a couple years, I think. So I was really excited when they put it in Squad. Because, Marines, you ask any Marine, we all love our M16A4, 20-inch barrel. But this stock right here, the artwork they did on it, I could tell that they must have had a prior service Marine either designing this for the game or advising on it, because this is definitely a Marine Corps stock. Salty as hell right here. You see how the plastic, an old A2 style stock, the plastic we got all salty like this. And of course you have the rack numbers right here. The rack number here stenciled. You have the tape, and you have paint pen. For those who don't know, rack number is simply the number that your rifle is assigned, what rack it's assigned. So in a unit armory, rifles are going to be sitting in racks. So if you need to find a rifle, instead of trying to memorize what the serial number is and figuring out where to find it, you just know that rifle number 29 is in rack 29. And then so normally you would either have it stenciled or taped or sometimes drawn with paint pen. You would never have all of that on the same stock. But which method you use to mark it, in my experience, seems to depend on unit SOP. So I guess it's whoever the armory chief is, however they like to have it marked. But I've seen all these different things. Now, of course, they have all three here in the stock, probably because to just show off the artwork. To be honest, I could definitely tell there's a lot of fan service that's for this the M16A4. So this is a very good Marine Corps stock right here. And yeah, the tape up here is usually like a piece of paper where you write or print the rack number on it, and then it's secured with clear tape on the stock. So, yeah, definitely. I really like how they have that salty Marine Corps stock right there. The quintessential Marine Corps stock on an M16A4. Absolutely. This is a salty rifle. Let's move over to the receiver, the lower receiver. Now, I can already tell that this is an incorrect lower receiver because this right here is indicative of it being an M16A1 lower receiver. This right here is, this line is like, it's the channel that the detent for the rear takedown pin goes through. On the M16A1, you could see that detent channel. From the M16A2 onwards, they thickened up the material here in the rear of the receiver to give it some extra strength. So that detent channel is actually buried. So you would not be able to see this detent channel on an M16A2 lower receiver. The thing about the M16A4 is that the lower receiver, the entire lower receiver group, is exactly an M16A2 lower receiver. In fact, M16A4 is basically an M16A2, except it has a flat top railed upper and it has the quad rail. Otherwise, if you slap some plastic clamshell handguards on here, it's essentially an M16A2. But yeah, also fire semi-auto. That's all wrong. It should be safe semi and burst, 3-round burst, just like the M16A2. So that's incorrect right here. This otherwise does look like an A2 lower. I believe that front right here, this thickness is the A2 thickness. The A1 was a little bit thinner. So I think the rest of it is correct for an A2 lower, but this is incorrect. Now, I don't know why they put this in the game, because this is kind of unusual right here. Like if you're referencing some, a real life model or something like this, you wouldn't see this except on an M16A1. But one theory I have is OWI, the studio that made this game, is a Canadian game studio, and in Canada, they probably referenced something like a Norinco CQ, is my guess. In the United States, so for those who don't know, a Norinco CQ is basically a Chinese copy of the M16, and they also have like an M4 carbine variants as well. These guns are exquisitely rare in the United States. Because since the 1980s, the United States has an import ban against China for guns and things like that. So, but Canada doesn't have such restrictions. So on the civilian market in Canada, you could actually get Chinese weapons. You could get Norinco CQs and like semi-auto versions of QBZ 95s and all of that in Canada. So Canadians actually have access to certain guns that we don't here in the United States. And I believe the Norinco CQ actually has the M16A1 profile in the rear of the lower receiver like this. So I wonder if OWI, when they modeled this gun, when they used an actual object to model this gun, I wonder if they've used the Norinco CQ. So I'm curious about that. See, moving on, M16A2 style pistol grip, which is correct. Just a normal mil-spec trigger with the trigger guard right here. Magazine well, this looks like just a normal Stanag GI magazine. I don't know, this thing on here on the bottom, I don't know what that's supposed to be. That's not what it's supposed to look like. Otherwise, it's a good looking magazine. Let's see what they do for markings. So the markings right here are incorrect. It's marked as an M4A1. I suppose they probably did this because the original lower receiver was for the M4. The M4 was one of the first guns in the game when they first made this game. So they probably just they just copied the skin to the M16. Not a big deal. You're not going to be looking at these marks when you're playing the game. This is a Colt mark, or a cold defense right here. I meant, probably for legal reasons, they have to use some, like a fictional, like a pseudonym for the real company. When I was in every single M16 and M4 that I remember seeing the markings on were always FN marked. At some point, Fabrique Nationale took over the contract from Colt. So I've always seen FN guns, although I'm pretty sure Colt did make some M16A4s before losing the contract. But yeah, it would be marked M16A4, not M4A1. So carbine, it would be M16A4 rifle marked. You might possibly see some M16A2 lower receivers that were converted to A4s, but if that's the case, I'm pretty sure that you would normally see it overstamped from A2 to A4, overstamped. Um, let's see. Moving on to and of course the fire selector on this side, of course, is completely wrong. It should be safe right here, semi, and burst, 3-round burst. M16A4s are all 3-round burst, without exception. So, but in the game, it's 3-round burst as well, right? When you use it in the game, it's 3-round burst, but the artwork here is incorrect. Uh, let's see. Looking at the upper receiver. Upper receiver looks good too. Of course, you have the detachable carrying handle on here. It's incorrectly marked up here. It should be 3/6, 300 and 600 meters, not 3/4. Other than that, it looks really good, and I like the amount of wear they have on here too. You can see where kind of the exposed areas are a little bit more worn. Here at the brass deflector is kind of worn because it sticks out, rubs on stuff. So really good wear pattern here. So I'm a big fan of that. Now, another critique I would lay is the color here, the black. Most M16A4s I've seen are very black, like jet black. In fact, a lot of them are so black that they actually have a kind of purplish tint to them. This kind of gray color this is definitely black, but it's kind of a duller black. I'm not saying that this is unheard of, but most military M16s I've seen and M4s too are really, really dark black, much darker than this. This is more what I see like on like civilian AR-15s. So again, I wonder if they modeled like a civilian AR-15, whatever anodizing they use on the civilian market or Cerakote or whatever. But the military ones, I believe, are anodized. The receivers are anodized aluminum, and it's super black. But yeah, pretty much that looks really good. You have the barcode right here. All the military issued guns in the U.S. military have this barcode with the little QR code right there. So that's a cool touch right there. The gas tube right here, this should actually be silver. The gas tube is not painted. It's just a silver gas tube. You got to keep in mind, I'm extremely nitpicking here, right? None of this stuff is really important, but I'm just going over here with the finest of toothed combs here. So moving forward to the handguard right here, you have the Knight's Armament CAC handguard with the PEC 16 right here. The PEC 16 is really cool because it has the infrared laser and the infrared floodlight as well as the white light, so you don't have to have a separate flashlight bolted on your gun. And this is the Knight's Armament's broom handle. Pretty much all the M16A4s are going to have the broom handle on it. Although this broom handle looks awfully big. There seems to be some proportion issues here with the model. I think it should be a little smaller. One thing I noticed incorrect here is the barrel thickness, right? The barrel looks too thick underneath the handguard, and it looks too thin out here. So the way it is, so with the M16A1, the barrel thickness was 0.625 inches throughout the whole length of the barrel. With the M16A2, they wanted to thicken up the barrel, but they only thickened it up at the end. So the barrel is basically this thickness right here, 0.75 inches, starting here at the front sight post, going all the way out to the end. You see that they incorrectly have it cut down here to a thinner profile. That's not correct at all. This thickness should be maintained all the way out to the end of the barrel, but it should be thin underneath the handguard because the M203 grenade launcher was designed with the M16A1, and so the M203 connects the rear bracket here and the front bracket up here in the front. And actually with the A4, you don't need to have that weird heat shield like on the A1 and the A2 with the 203. You can actually just take off the bottom handguard. This plastic thing goes away, and that's where the front bracket of the M203 goes. So the barrel underneath is the same dimension or the same thickness as the M16A1 barrel, and the grenade launcher could attach to that with no issues. So the barrel profile is completely wrong on here. Again, that's a small detail. You don't really notice this when playing the game. M16A2 front sight with the uh, bayonet lug here and the sling swivel. Very nice. I don't believe the CAC rail has these holes on the side rails, and also the top rail. The rails are supposed to be marked too. Um, Again, that might be like, because this is a real product, Knight's Armament product. So maybe they had to make some changes to it just to, for legal purposes. Also, it would say Knight's Armament on the handguard covers. Again, for legal purposes, they probably have to have some certain cosmetic concessions. But let's take a look at the rifle in the game right here. So you have the RCO here on the top right here. I'm a huge fan of the RCO. 4 powers, the ACOG. It's a TA31, I believe. It has the chevron. That chevron right there, interestingly, the thickness of that chevron is actually the thickness of the width of a man's shoulders at 200 meters. So you can see that actually plays out in this game. And so you can actually use this to range stuff. The crotch of the chevron is a 200-meter holding point. The tip of the spear is 300. And then, of course, you have the hash marks for 4, 5, and 6. Now, this dot here in the middle, that's not on the real one. The real one wouldn't have that dot. It's possible, maybe if you buy a RCO from Trigicon, you might have the option to have that dot, because I know there's all kinds of different reticles that Trigicon offers. But the government contract RCOs don't have that dot. At least not any that I've ever seen. I think they just added it in the game because it's easier to use for a 200-meter holding mark. But other than that dot, yeah, this is a very well portrayed Trigicon scope. You can see the honeycomb pattern. That's from the kill flash in the front. Basically stops the glass in the front of the scope from shining in the sun. Pretty much all the RCOs would have a kill flash issued for it. In my experience, if I saw an RCO, if you see an RCO that doesn't have a kill flash on it, it's probably because it got broken or it got lost or whatever, because it is kind of a delicate piece. So you would normally have it, but sometimes you don't. So it's not unusual to see one without one. You can see right here on the top, you have the fiber optic. This is where basically the sun helps the reticle glow. The reticle actually glows by itself. It's made of tritium. It glows at night, so it's easy to see at night, but it's not enough brightness to see during the day. So this the fiber optic on the top takes on the sunlight, so it glows during the day. Now the only thing about that fiber optic is that on a sunny day, it is super bright. It's too bright. It's actually so bright you could barely even see it. It kind of blows out the reticle. So what almost all of us do is we put tape on that fiber optic. We'll put usually black electrical tape or whatever tape is available, and usually cover up about half, if not about 2/3 of the fiber optic, so we could get the nice brightness. However bright or dull or dark you like your reticle is how much tape you put on it, because it's just so bright during the day. It's too bright. A naked fiber optic like this would just be too bright. Yeah, you have it held on right there with the knobs. Some of the RCOs I saw had the quick detach throw levers. Most of them have these knobs. If you're worried about the knobs coming loose, you can always mark them. But I never really had an issue with that. But so yeah, this is pretty typical RCO. There's no rear sight on here. That's also not super uncommon either. Usually there is a rear sight. It's usually for the Marine Corps. It's usually the Knight's Armament, the CAC flip up rear sight. Although sometimes I did see the Army, the one the Army uses. I think it's like Maytech or something that the Army uses. The flip up sight, but it's also not uncommon to just not see any rear sight at all. To be honest, these optics are so durable and reliable. You really don't really need a rear sight, and most of the dudes with rear sights on their rifles haven't even bothered zeroing their rear sight, so it's not useful anyway. And to be honest, I mean, like an RCO is so tough. If something violent enough happened to break that RCO, it probably broke you too, right? So yeah, this is very good. Of course, very good artwork on the RCO. I like how you have the barcode, the serial number. This is issued gear, right? So it has a serial number. So you're issued this RCO with the serial number with the rifle. You're issued that as well, and you're issued the PEC 16 also has a serial number on it, and you're responsible for turning all that shit in at the end of the day when back to the armory, right? Not that that's really a big deal because you're not taking your scope on and off the rifle. Scope pretty much lives on the rifle. Um, but yeah, pretty much that's the M16A4 in squad. Um, Pretty much as depicted in the game. I'm a pretty big fan of it. You know, I love my M16A4. You guys, any Marine, you know, we love our M16A4, so it's really cool that they have it in the game, and I think they did a pretty good job at portraying it. There's a few glaring issues here, but you know, overall, I think they did a pretty good job with the M16A4. So that's it for now.